Hey guys, what's up? Kalamazi here, and this time we're going to be taking a look at Demonology in Tol Dagor. Now I'm running a bit of a different build than the last demo video in which I had the summon Vilefiend and Nether portal talents. In this run we're going to be trying both the From the Shadows and Sacrifice Souls talents instead. I chose Tol Dagor to test them as I felt it was a bit more of a single target based instance when it came to the actual boss encounters, and wanted to see how From the Shadows and Sacrifice Souls were when paired together respectively. Now with this build I'm expecting to see Demon Bolt contributing more to our overall damage in previous runs. One thing to really watch is that you're going to want to save your Demon Bolt procs when you actually cast Call Dreadstalkers due to the damage increase they provide. Maintaining 5 stacks of Sacrifice Souls is also important as it increases your Shadow Bolt damage a good bit. The first boss we're going to encounter is the Sand Queen. She doesn't have a whole lot of really threatening abilities. The main one you want to watch out for is the brown circles you're going to see appear here underground. Basically you want to position yourself between them in a way that when the winds start blowing in from one direction or another, you're able to just sort of slide between them without really having any erupting in your casting or rotation at all. She will dive under the ground as well and come back up under a random raid member, so just stay spread so that not more than one member gets hit, and that's basically most of the fight. She will spawn a buzzing drone ad on heroic and higher, but it's basically just a target that you need to swap to quickly, and implosion is great for that now. And taking a look at the actual damage breakdown from the Sand Queen, it's sort of what I expected. With it being a normal difficulty fight, there's not a whole lot of movement and a whole lot of mechanics. You can see the Beast Mastery Hunter was pretty close behind me, followed by the Destruction Warlock. One thing to make note of is that I said on heroic and higher difficulties, she does spawn 1 or 2 buzzing drone ads throughout the fight, which will give Beast Mastery, especially Destruction, a little bit more play with Havoc. However, having Implosion baseline with Demonology gives it a little bit more play there as well. Looking at the actual damage breakdown here, you can see it's the same as previous dungeons we've run, with melee being number 1, Firebolt number 2, and Hand Gul'dan being around number 3 or so. One thing to make note of here is that Shadow Bolt was actually 8% of our overall damage there, which is a little bit more than we've seen in the previous dungeons, which it was about 6%. So you can contribute Sacrifice Souls, potentially giving about a 2% damage increase there to Shadow Bolt. Demon Bolt was around 5%, which is about the same as we've seen before, but I think they can play a little bit more into actual RNG, just of Demon Bolt procs and things of the sort. Jess Howless is the second boss encounter in the instance, and he's actually the only boss in Tol Dagor which has a few ads present. At 50% he will stun the group and run along the corridor here, opening I believe 6 cells, thus releasing 6 or so mobs that have to be killed. We simply dragged them along behind him and killed or AoE'd them down once we reached the end of the corridor. His Howling Fear does need to be interrupted every time, and sadly this is something that our group was not the best at. I was using the Felguard here, which does not have an actual interrupt, and simply thought the melee and other members of the group would be able to handle the interrupts, but sadly that wasn't the case. His Flying Dagger's ability does need to be LOS, but it's easy to do so here with the pillars right outside the room he's fought in. Implosion is nice here for you reach the end of the hallway and are able to actually AoE the remaining ads down. Looking at the damage breakdown, we can see that Demo ended up ahead by about 400 DPS, but I attribute a good bit of that to Implosion on the actual ads, I guess towards the end of the intermission, as well as some of the Hand of Gul'dan impact splash damage on them as well. Taking a look at the actual breakdown, we do see Implosion being our second highest damaging ability, which is what we thought the extra bit of disparity on the meter could be from. Hand of Gul'dan is actually a bit lower than I thought it would be, but I suppose that it could be from killing the ads pretty quickly actually with Implosion. Shadow Bolt is a good bit lower than the last boss at 3.2%, but the fight does have a good bit of movement which will affect its overall damage. We do see here the Demo Bolt finished around 7.2% with 11 actual cast. Comparing it to previous dungeon runs where we had similar cast, it amounted to about 5% versus this boss it being 7.2%. I wanted to note as well as looking back at previous runs where we did not have From the Shadows, Demo Bolt's average damage was about 1.3k per hit, where we can see here it's right around 1.8k, which we can attribute a good bit to actually taking or having the From the Shadows talent. Knight Captain Valyria is the third boss we encountered, and the fight does have the potential for a good bit of movement, depending on which party member is moving the explosive barrels from the fire circle she drops. In previous runs we had the healer and a bit more of a mobile DPS move them, as well as there is a decent bit of healing downtime here. Towards the end of the fight we did start ignoring the actual fire circles and opted to simply kill her here, but this will not work on higher difficulties. Looking at their overall damage, Demonology was ahead by a good bit here. This can partially be attributed to the fact that we had other members of the group moving barrels, but also partially to the fact that I went into the encounter rolling 1 to 2 stacks of instant demon bolts as well, which led to a pretty strong opener. Now I did actually contemplate getting rid of the 2 stacks of the instant cast demon bolt I had when I went into the encounter, but I decided against it, and that's because honestly you're actually going to be able to do this in Mythic Plus and everything. It's not going to be something that clears when you actually pull bosses like things do when you actually encounter raid bosses. The breakdown here does show melee as number 1 with Fellfire Bolt being number 2, but we do see both Demon Bolt and Shadow Bolt as 3 and 4 respectively. We had a total of 10 Demon Bolt casts throughout the encounter with an average of 2k per Demon Bolt and Shadow Bolt averaging around 820, which when compared to previous runs without From the Shadows and Sacrifice Souls is about 200 more average per Shadow Bolt than before. Demon Bolt clocks in at about an average of 2000 as well, which is 800 more than previous runs also. The implosion damage was in the very end of the encounter when I had a few imps remaining with high energy that would not gain their full entire damage output before the fight actually ended. I feel that this was the best encounter we had in this run to display the power and difference of running From the Shadows and Sacrifice Souls compared to running some in Vilefiend and Nether Portal like in the past. The additional damage that's done by both Demon Bolt and Shadow Bolt is actually very significant and even a bit more than I expected initially, which is awesome. Overseer Korgus is the final encounter, and it has been changed a bit since I had last seen the fight. In previous rounds there had only been 1 cannon active, which would spin, it seemed, every 30 seconds or so. In this round, however, both were active, and it seemed as if there's always one spinning or firing its explosive round at the group. This did amount to a good bit more movement than I had thought there would be, but we still one-shot the encounter. His cross-ignition ability previously also had a visual in which you could react to it on the ground during the cast, but I believe it's actually bugged here as you cannot see any visual effect before the cast actually completes, as you see right there. The damage as mentioned is a bit skewed here, as there were some battle reses and a few deaths on the fight, but there's also a good bit of movement required here as well, which I did not anticipate. The Destruction Warlock was a good bit closer than previous bosses, which can be attributed a bit to the required movement, and the Beam Hunter did die early in the fight, which is why their damage is much lower than previous encounters. The damage breakdown here is about what you'd expect. We did not have as many Demon Bolt procs, which led to it being lower than the last two bosses. Shadow Bolt was still pretty high overall, and clocked in with an average cast of 800 damage, which is still about 200 higher than previous runs with different talents. Having a good bit of movement on the fight led to less Hand of Gul'dan and Call Dreadstalker's cast, which in return led to less Demon Bolt procs, which you can attribute a bit to Demon Bolt being lower here. Demon Fire, which is the demonic commander's ability, did clock in right around where it has been for every boss this run, but with there being more movement on the fight makes it an even stronger summon, as once it summons, it casts its abilities, as well as extends the duration of your active pets on its own, and also increases their damage by 15% while the commander is active. Here's the overall damage for Trash during the run. I added this in as it still does play a factor, and is especially useful for future Mythic Plus group comp and interaction overall. Looking at the damage breakdown, we can see that Hand of Gul'dan's impact and splash damage has a very large portion of our trash damage, even more so than our Imp's Fel Firebolts overall. The Felguard's Legion Strike is right below Fel Firebolt, and Implosion is also present, which I used a good bit towards the end of most trash packs. Overall, I like this talent build of Demo. I do feel that it's a bit more skewed towards the single target end of the spectrum, but we still do have a large bit of AoE damage from Hand of Gul'dan and Implosion being baseline now. I think it does have a bit more upside for pure single target encounters, but it's a bit more punishing if you have to move, like after casting a Call of Dreadstalkers, or if your Sacrifice Souls buff does drop for whatever reason. It's a lot harder to recover than, say, running Summon Vilefiend and Nether Portal. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know what you thought of this build and the run overall in the comments below. Also let me know what other specs / builds or clashes you want to see some runs with logs from. If you want to see more Battle for Azeroth and Warcraft content, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons below, as I release new content every 2 to 3 days. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you all in Battle for Azeroth. Peace.